There exists within you a second self, one that was constructed before you had the words to resist its formation. This self smiles when you want to scream, agrees when you want to argue, stays when you want to leave. It is not your authentic nature, but a sophisticated survival mechanism that began in childhood, when disappointing the wrong person meant losing safety, losing love, losing everything a small human needs to survive. Think back to the first time you swallowed your truth to keep someone else comfortable. Perhaps you were 4, perhaps 6, perhaps 8 years old. You expressed a need, a desire, an honest emotion, and the response taught you that authenticity was dangerous. Maybe it was a parent who withdrew affection when you showed anger. Maybe it was a teacher who praised compliance over curiosity. Maybe it was simply the ambient pressure of a culture that rewards those who never make waves. That moment, whenever it occurred, marked the birth of your persona. Not the healthy social mask that everyone needs to navigate civilization, but something more insidious. A complete identity built around one core belief. Your value exists only in your usefulness to others. Your worth is measured by how little space you take up, how few problems you create, how smoothly you dissolve into the expectations around you. The child who learns this lesson becomes an adult who cannot distinguish between kindness and self-erasure. They believe that love must be earned through constant availability, that respect comes from never having boundaries, that peace is achieved by absorbing conflict rather than addressing it. They become emotional shapeshifters, constantly reading the room, adjusting their personality to match what they believe others need them to be. This is exhausting work, though most never recognize it as work. They simply feel tired all the time without understanding why. They wake up drained before the day begins because they are already calculating how to navigate the emotional needs of everyone they will encounter. They go to sleep replaying conversations, wondering if they said too much, revealed too much, asked for too much. The hypervigilance never stops because the stakes feel existential. If they stop pleasing, they might be abandoned. If they are abandoned, they might cease to exist. The tragedy is that this entire system is built on a lie. The love you receive for being agreeable is not love for you. It is appreciation for a service you provide. The respect you get for never saying no is not respect for your character. It is relief that you will never be a problem. The peace you maintain by avoiding conflict is not peace at all. It is suppression that will eventually explode in ways you cannot predict or control. Consider how much energy you expend managing other people's emotions while ignoring your own. You sense someone's disappointment and immediately strategize how to fix it. You detect frustration and automatically assume responsibility for soothing it. You perceive any negative emotion in your vicinity as a problem you must solve, a fire you must extinguish, a wound you must heal. But whose emotions are being managed? Who soothes your disappointment? Who takes responsibility for your frustration? The answer reveals the imbalance at the heart of people-pleasing. You have been trained to be infinitely sensitive to others while being completely numb to yourself. You can read a room with extraordinary precision, but cannot read your own needs. You know exactly what everyone else wants, but have no idea what you desire beyond their approval. This disconnection from self runs deeper than behavior. It becomes neurological. Your nervous system learns to prioritize external threats over internal signals. You become more attuned to a slight change in someone's tone than to your own hunger, exhaustion, or pain. Your body tries to communicate through headaches, insomnia, digestive issues, chronic tension, but you override these signals because someone needs something from you, and their need always feels more urgent than your own. The professional people-pleaser develops remarkable skills. They become expert emotional laborers, anticipating needs before they are expressed, solving problems before they fully manifest, smoothing tensions before they escalate. They pride themselves on being low-maintenance, easygoing, flexible. They wear their selflessness like armor, believing it protects them from rejection. But armor that never comes off eventually becomes a cage. Watch yourself in any interaction. Notice how quickly you scan for what the other person wants to hear. Notice how automatically you adjust your opinion to avoid friction. Notice how reflexively you apologize for things that require no apology. Notice how you offer help before anyone asks, volunteer for tasks you do not want, agree to plans that exhaust you. These are not conscious choices. They are programmed responses, as automatic as breathing. The most insidious aspect of this programming is how it makes you complicit in your own diminishment. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you train others to ignore your boundaries. Every time you pretend to be fine when you are not, you teach people that your well-being is not worth checking on. Every time you sacrifice your needs for someone else's comfort, you reinforce the message that you matter less. And the world responds accordingly, not with malice, but with simple cause and effect. If you always bend, people will expect you to bend. If you never complain, people will assume you have no complaints. If you always give, people will continue taking, not because they are cruel, but because you have taught them this is acceptable, even expected. Beneath the surface of every people-pleaser lives something they cannot acknowledge: rage. Not the explosive kind that everyone can see, but the slow-burning variety that corrodes from within. It manifests as exhaustion that sleep cannot cure, irritability that has no clear source, a persistent sense of being used that you immediately suppress because good people do not think such thoughts. This hidden anger is the shadow of niceness, the price of perpetual agreeability. Every time you smiled when you wanted to cry, every time you said yes when your entire being screamed no, that energy did not disappear. It went underground, into your body, into your unconscious, where it festers and grows and waits for moments of weakness to emerge in ways you cannot control. The passive-aggressive text you send and immediately regret. The cutting remark that slips out during casual conversation. The sudden overwhelm that makes you want to abandon everyone and everything. These are not character flaws. They are pressure valves releasing steam from a system that was never designed to contain this much suppression. People-pleasers become masters of indirect aggression because direct confrontation feels impossible. They cannot say, "I am angry," so they say, "I am fine," in a tone that suggests otherwise. They cannot set boundaries, so they become mysteriously unavailable. They cannot express disappointment, so they withdraw affection gradually, almost imperceptibly, until the relationship dies of subtle neglect. This is not manipulation in the conscious sense. It is the only way a person who has been forbidden from having needs can express that those needs exist. The body keeps score, even when the mind refuses to acknowledge the game. Chronic pain appears with no medical explanation. Digestive issues arise from swallowing too much that should have been spoken. The immune system weakens from the constant stress of performance. Watch how your body responds when someone asks for something you do not want to give. There is an instant of truth before the programming kicks in. A tightening in your chest, a sinking in your stomach, a subtle pulling back that happens before your smile appears and your mouth says yes. That moment of physical resistance is your authentic self trying to protect you, and you override it every single time. The cost compounds over years. You become someone who resents the very people you are trying to please. You hate them for taking what you freely offered. You despise them for believing the performance you insisted on maintaining. You judge them for not seeing through your mask when you have spent your entire life perfecting it. But the deepest resentment is reserved for yourself. For being weak, for being fake, for being unable to stop the pattern even though you see it clearly. You know you are participating in your own exploitation, but the alternative feels like death. Not physical death, but social death. The complete exile from the warmth of others' approval. This is where the cruel irony reveals itself. The love you are so desperately protecting does not actually exist. People do not love you. They love what you do for them. They do not respect you. They appreciate your convenience. They do not see you. They see a role you play in their life. Mother, friend, colleague, partner, but never the actual person beneath these functions. How could they see you when you have never shown yourself? How could they love you when you have never been present? You have offered them a carefully curated experience designed to meet their needs while hiding your own. They accepted what you presented because that is what humans do. They responded to the person you pretended to be. The relationship built on this foundation is hollow at its core. You know this in quiet moments, usually late at night when the performance has ended and you are alone with yourself. You feel the emptiness of connections that look intimate from the outside but feel transactional from within. You have many relationships, but no real intimacy. Many people need you, but nobody truly knows you. Some people pleasers try to test the relationship by suddenly changing, setting a boundary, expressing a need, saying no. The response is usually swift and brutal. Confusion turns to frustration, turns to anger, turns to abandonment. The person who was so important to them yesterday becomes disposable today, the moment they stop providing the service they were valued for. This feels like betrayal, but it is simply revelation. The relationship was always conditional. You were just never told the conditions. Your value was always functional. You just thought it was personal. The love was always transactional. You just paid in advance and hoped for credit. But here is what most people pleasers never realize. The ones who leave when you set boundaries were never going to stay anyway. They were tourists in your life, present for the amenities, gone the moment the service declined. Their departure is not loss, but clarity. It creates space for something real to potentially emerge. The problem is that most people pleasers interpret this abandonment as proof that their fears were justified. See, they think, I knew this would happen if I stopped pleasing. I knew they would leave if I showed my real self. But they missed the crucial point. These people did not leave because you became difficult. They left because you stopped being useful. The moment you stop pleasing people, something dies. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, like watching ice melt in reverse. The identity you spent decades constructing begins to dissolve, and what remains feels alien, unformed, terrifying. You discover that beneath the elaborate performance of agreeability, there is someone you do not recognize, someone who has opinions that might offend, needs that might burden, boundaries that might isolate. This is the beginning of what psychology calls individuation, though that clinical term fails to capture the raw disorientation of the process. It feels less like growth and more like demolition. Every no you speak breaks another piece of the old architecture. Every boundary you set removes another brick from the fortress of false self you built for protection. The first stage is always guilt, but not ordinary guilt. This is existential guilt, the kind that makes you question your right to exist as anything other than useful. You set a small boundary, perhaps declining an invitation or refusing a favor, and the guilt arrives like a tidal wave. Your mind races with justifications, explanations, apologies you want to offer, but must not. You feel selfish, cruel, wrong at a fundamental level. This guilt is not evidence of wrongdoing. It is withdrawal from a lifetime of approval addiction. Your nervous system, accustomed to the chemical reward of making others happy, rebels against this new pattern. It sends alarm signals suggesting danger, catastrophe, abandonment. But these signals are not prophecy. They are the dying gasps of an old program that no longer serves you. As you persist through the guilt, something unexpected happens. People begin to reveal themselves. Those who genuinely cared about you adjust to your boundaries, with curiosity rather than anger. They might be surprised, even concerned, but they adapt. They learn your new limits and respect them. These are the relationships worth keeping. But others reveal a different nature entirely. They become angry, manipulative, wounded by your sudden unwillingness to sacrifice yourself for their comfort. They accuse you of changing, of becoming selfish, of not being the person they thought you were. They are correct. You are not the person they thought you were, because that person never existed. It was a performance, and you have canceled the show. These people will try various strategies to restore the old dynamic. They will guilt you with memories of all you have done together, as if past compliance creates future obligation. They will paint themselves as victims of your cruelty, as if your boundaries are acts of violence. They will recruit others to pressure you back into submission, creating narratives about your selfishness that spread through mutual connections. Let them. Their reaction is not about you. It is about losing access to someone who made their life easier at the expense of your own well-being. Their anger is the tantrum of entitlement denied. Their manipulation is the scrambling of someone who confused your kindness for weakness and cannot accept being proven wrong. During this period, you will lose people. Sometimes many people. The social circle that seemed so solid reveals itself to be conditional, built on your willingness to be the one who always gives, always accommodates, always smooths things over. When you stop playing this role, the entire structure might collapse. This feels like failure, but it is actually revelation. You are discovering who actually values you versus who values what you provide. The distinction is crucial and painful. The friend who only called when they needed something stops calling entirely. The family member who expected unlimited emotional labor suddenly finds you difficult. The partner who loved how easy you were to be discovers they cannot handle you having needs. Each departure carves out space, creating room for something new to grow. But first, there is emptiness. A social void where the performance used to be. Friday nights with no plans, because you are no longer organizing everyone else's social life. Holidays that feel strange, because you are not exhausting yourself to make them perfect for others. A phone that stops ringing, because you are no longer the unpaid therapist for everyone's problems. This emptiness is not punishment. It is possibility. For the first time in your life, you have space to discover who you are when you are not performing. What do you actually enjoy when you are not calculating what others want you to enjoy? What opinions do you hold when you are not moderating them for public consumption? What desires arise when you stop suppressing them for fear of inconveniencing others? The answers might surprise you. The person who emerges from beneath the people-pleasing mask is often sharper, funnier, more interesting than the agreeable facade ever was. They have edges, preferences, passionate opinions. They laugh differently, more honestly. They love differently, more selectively, but more deeply. They exist differently, taking up space instead of apologizing for it. But this emergence is not immediate. It happens in stages, in moments of courage followed by moments of retreat. You might set a boundary on Monday and break it by Wednesday. You might speak your truth in one conversation and revert to people-pleasing in the next. This is not failure. It is the messy process of becoming real. The architecture of boundaries is not built through grand gestures, but through small, consistent acts of self-preservation. You do not become whole by making dramatic declarations of independence. You become whole by learning to pause before answering, to consider before committing, to feel your own needs before addressing someone else's. Start with the pause. When someone asks something of you, resist the immediate yes that wants to spring from your mouth. Take a breath. Feel what your body tells you. Notice whether you genuinely want to help or whether you are simply afraid of disappointing. This pause, even if it only lasts 3 seconds, breaks the automatic pattern that has governed your life. In that pause, you begin to recognize the difference between genuine generosity and compulsive giving. Genuine generosity feels expansive, energizing, free. It comes from abundance, not fear. Compulsive giving feels tight, depleting, obligatory. It comes from the belief that you must earn your right to exist through service to others. As you practice this discrimination, You start to redefine your value. You are not valuable because you never say no. You are valuable because your yes means something. You are not worthy because you absorb everyone's problems. You are worthy because you have learned what is yours to carry and what belongs to others. This shift in self-concept changes everything. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop explaining your boundaries as if they require justification. You stop softening your no to make it easier for others to digest. You learn that disappointment is not an emergency requiring your immediate intervention. It is simply a human emotion that others are capable of processing without your assistance. The people around you begin to recalibrate their expectations. Not immediately, and not without resistance, but gradually. They learn that you are no longer infinitely available. They discover that your time has value, your energy has limits, your presence is not guaranteed. Some will respect this evolution. Others will resent it. Both responses provide valuable information about who belongs in your life going forward. You discover that being disliked by some people is not death. It is freedom. The energy you once spent trying to win everyone as approval can now be directed toward things that actually matter to you. The mental space once occupied managing others' emotions becomes available for your own growth. The time once consumed by obligations you never wanted becomes time for experiences you actually choose. New relationships begin to form, different from the old ones. These connections are based on mutual respect rather than unilateral service. People are drawn to your clarity, your honesty, your ability to be present without performing. They appreciate that your yes means yes and your no means no. They trust you because you have become trustworthy to yourself first. You learn to disappoint without apologizing, to decline without explaining, to have preferences without defending them. You discover that most people adjust to your boundaries far more easily than you expected. The catastrophes you imagined never materialize. The abandonment you feared becomes a filtering process that leaves only what is real. Your body begins to relax in ways you did not know it was tense. The chronic exhaustion lifts because you are no longer performing emotional labor for everyone you encounter. The resentment dissolves because you are no longer saying yes when you mean no. The anxiety decreases because you are no longer managing outcomes that were never your responsibility. But perhaps the most profound change is in your relationship with yourself. You begin to trust your own judgment because you honor it with action. You begin to respect your own needs because you treat them as legitimate. You begin to like yourself because you are finally being yourself, not a carefully constructed response to what you imagine others want. This is not about becoming selfish or cold. It is about becoming real. You still help others, but from choice rather than compulsion. You still show kindness, but genuine kindness that includes yourself in its circle of compassion. You still maintain relationships, but relationships based on truth rather than transaction. The final transformation is not dramatic. One day you simply notice that you no longer feel like you are performing. You are just being. You no longer calculate every response for maximum approval. You just speak. You no longer scan every room for emotional needs to meet. You just exist, present and whole, taking up exactly the amount of space you need. This is what individuation actually means. Not becoming perfect, but becoming complete. Not never helping others, but helping from wholeness rather than emptiness. Not rejecting connection, but connecting from authenticity rather than fear. You become someone who can disappoint others without collapsing, who can be misunderstood without correcting, who can be disliked without performing. The person who emerges from this process is not harder but clearer, not cruel but boundaried, not selfish but self-possessed. They have learned the difference between kindness and self-abandonment, between compassion and enabling, between love and transaction. They have discovered that the truest service they can offer the world is to be completely, unapologetically themselves. This is the paradox that people pleasers never expect. By stopping the performance of universal likability, you become genuinely likable. By ceasing to chase approval, you become worthy of respect. By refusing to abandon yourself, you become capable of real love. The authentic self that emerges from beneath the mask is infinitely more valuable than the performance ever was. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be real. You are not here to manage everyone's emotions. You are here to be responsible for your own. You are not here to be liked by everyone. You are here to be true to yourself. And in that truth, in that sacred selfishness that is actually self-respect, you find the freedom that no amount of approval could ever provide.